evening. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the SFL podcast presented by APM Music live on twitch.tv. I am your host, Jack Brown, and joining me is owner of the Mexico City Aztecs, Ramos Lynn, and owner of the Alaska Storm, Mighty RX. Anyway, before we start, guys, how are you guys doing today?
I'm doing very well. Thank you very much, Jack. I'm glad to be here on the new revamped, phenomenal SFL podcast. So let's get it going.
That is true. That's true. How are you doing, Mighty?
I'm good. It's been a while since I've been in the passenger seat. It's kind of comfy. I like this side, Jack. So you keep holding it down.
Yep. Hopefully, I won't crash us into a tree. Anyway, so today, tonight on the SFL podcast, we're going to be looking over some preseason scores. Both Mighty and Ramos are going to be giving their teams the preseason. Then they're going to give their personal favorite players, the offense and defense. We're going to be taking a brief look over of the new playoff structure, along with Mighty and Ramos's conference favorites and wildcard favorites. Then we're going to be barreling into Week 1 matchups. And finally, we're going to be concluding with the opening day breakdown of Mexico City and Queen City. But first off, let's head into the preseason. First off, on Tuesday night, the San Antonio Vaqueros upset the Queen City Corsairs 17-13 on their own home turf. Then, of course, Oklahoma City escaped Dallas's comeback, winning 24-21. On Wednesday night, Carolina decided to silence all smack talk by defeating the Vancouver Legion 20-14. And on Thursday, Sioux Falls routed the defending champion Mexico City Aztecs 22-7 at Liberty Field. While at the same time, Chicago barely escaped the cold of Alaska 20-17. And just last night, the Indianapolis Red Devils edged out Tallahassee 24-21. And the Tulsa Desperados absolutely trounced the Houston Hyenas 34-10 in the United States capital, Washington, D.C. And we apologize for the graphic error tonight, folks. The game between Atlanta and San Francisco will be just after the podcast here at 5:30 Central, while St. Louis is going to fly over to London to play the first ever SFL game in Europe against the London Knights. So, Ramos and Mighty, who've been a team that really stood out to you? Mighty, we're going to start off with you.
Tulsa impressed me last night. They came out guns blazing. Dion looked like a mix between Richard Snowden and Darnell Black. Ramos knows exactly who I'm referencing there. He looked unstoppable. And then conversely, the defense looked very bend but not break. So when Houston wants to go short, they allow Houston to go short. But whenever Houston wants to take more than they could chew, so to speak, last night, they clamped down, man, and they impressed the heck out of me. So it looks like that Dion learned a little bit from all the people that he, either played under or, coordinated for on his way to become owner of the Tulsa Desperados. So, good work, Dion. I understand it's preseason, so take everything with a grain of salt because, no game planning was involved, but just talent level wise, at least at the running back position, Dion looked like he's going to be a problem.
Certainly. And of course, it's kind of funny because Tulsa was a bit of like the meme team throughout the offseason. Nobody really gave them much of a shot. Ramos, who was the team that really stood out to you over these past 7 games?
It's kind of curious because when we did this podcast, I said that my 2 favorite builds were number 1, the Tulsa Desperados, and number 2, my team here, the Carolina Skyhawks. I really, really love the Carolina Skyhawks. AJ Francis was a beast. I really like Mark Bettix and how, he sip on the ball. He looked very smooth out there, shaking up the rust a little bit on the preseason. He did not miss a beat, really. And I love his mobility in the pocket, a lot of sip on the ball, very accurate. I really like the Carolina Skyhawks defense as well. But it was that offense, that backfield, I think will cause some people problems, really. AJ Francis got hurt, and he came back. And he did not only came back, but He scored a touchdown. He was there. So the Carolina Skyhawks are going to be a team to behold, really, because I really like what I saw from Carolina right there.
Yeah, certainly. And the two teams that you guys mentioned, really, they're the teams that probably a lot of people would at least have expected there, especially Carolina, coming off that 1-11 season from season 9. Mighty, who's your offensive player and defensive player who really, really just absolutely stood out to you over the course of the preseason?
Speaking of Carolina, my man AJ Francis, he was a man against Vancouver. Now I understand there are some other running backs that might have prettier numbers, more yards per carry, with the juking and the dodging. But people if people that have been listening to me know I like guys that hurt folk. Because we're not about running around looking. No, we're about running. If you're in my way, I will politely, maybe sometimes not so much politely, move you out of the way. And that's what AJ Francis did to the tune of 144 yards and a touchdown. He was not often was the first guy that got to him was bringing him down. He was branching through those tackles and just turning those legs and turning losses into positive gains. And that's what I love when running backs do. And he did exactly that against Vancouver. And I got to show love to my boy Big Sexy on the defensive side. Yeah, I know it's a homer pick, but the things he did that game with all the defensive linemen that are currently in the makeup of the SFL. Big Sexy came out there and showed out as the preeminent lineman still with 2.5 sacks and 5 tackles for losses in the loss to Chicago the other night. So those are my offensive and defensive players, at least so far this preseason.
Yeah, definitely. Can't disagree right there. AJ Francis, Carolina, they've had a pretty good run game these last couple seasons. I think even last season they had a pretty solid running attack, although the rest of their team did not hold up. Ramos, my man, my boss. Who would you say were really the players that stood out to you the most over this week?
Well, we played against them. We had to suffer against them. I will go with Robert Redford, the running back of the Sioux Falls Pharaohs. I mean, look at that, 32 carries, 144 yards. His longest carry was 29 yards. And what I really loved about Robert Redford here running the football was his quick feet, his quickness. He was able to bounce off of blocks. And really, he displayed a lot of good field vision, a lot of power, very smooth running back in the backfield for Sioux Falls. So he's going to be the workhorse for that team. On the defensive side, really, I mean, he is the GOAT. He is the GOAT as far as cover free safeties go. Troy LaShaw, I mean, look at that. 2 interceptions just in the preseason game. But this is what he does game in and game out. You know that Troy LaShaw will have those interceptions. He will get the tackles. He's active in the backfield, stops the run, covers tight ends, covers running backs. He covers everything. So I really love Troy LaShaw, really one of the best overall defensive players in SFL history. And he's potentially a candidate for Defensive Player of the Year.
I certainly cannot disagree with you there, Ramos. But however, if memory serves correctly, I did do some nice smacking on that Redford right there throughout the game. And got some helmet high tackles on him throughout there because in case there's anybody out there who doesn't know, I am the linebacker for the Mexico City Aztecs. And of course, next up we're going to be heading directly into the new playoff structure here for the SFL. Mighty, would you mind explaining how this is going to work?
Listen, folks, this is great. The SFL consists of 3 conferences: the Western, the Central, and the Eastern. Well, the top 2 teams from each of those conferences get automatic bids into our playoff second season. They've earned the right to have a chance to battle for the trophy. But get this. They're not the only teams that make it in. That's only 6. We got 4 more spots. And those 4 more spots belong to the 4 teams who have the best records of the teams that are remaining. Of those teams, we're going to go by tiebreaker, is the head-to-head of amongst conference records kind of deal. So the top 2 of each conference, which make 6, get in. And then the next best 4 records in the entire SFL are the 4 that make it in, but they don't make it to the automatically into the playoffs. They got to play it off on Wild Card Wednesday. You hear that? What they have a play-in game because they got to prove their worth before they get to play with the rest of the big boys on playoff weekend. There's no better way to determine who's the best of the best. So there's no way, no weak team that falls their way in or lucks their way in with a terrible record. You will have earned your way in, and that's how we do things here in the SFL.
Certainly. And this is also an extra little thing. If you win on Wildcard Wednesday, you don't get a week's break. No, you're playing that Sunday against whoever you're going to go up against. So, of course, now we're going to run through each of these conferences and determine what you guys think are going to be the top 2 from each conference. We're going to start out west. You got your 6 teams. You got Alaska, Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, San Francisco, and Vancouver. So, Mighty, who do you think is going to be taking the Western automatic berths?
Well, I got to give some love to my man, Damon, and the Houston Hyenas. I believe they'll be one of the top 2 teams out there. And then the Alaska Storm, yeah, some people are going to call it a homer pick. Defensively, even if they were to take a step back, they're going to be one of the better defenses in the league. They've been the best defense the last 2 years running. So a step back for them is like top 5, which is still good enough. And offensively, they have more than enough firepower to be in every game. So that's who I like out west for the top 2 spots.
Ramos, who do you think is going to make it out from your former conference, or I guess our former conference, the West?
Absolutely. So, I will agree with Mighty with Alaska. I have the Alaska Storm winning this division. I really loved how their build really matches up against the other builds in their division. And I love what I saw from Alaska in their preseason games. I have the Storm. They are a force. And they, can even be a pick for me to get to the championship game. I really like how the team compares, even though they have no running back, which is kind of like something different in the SFL, quote unquote. Dallas tried it, but it's something that normally all the teams want to have that running back. And the other team for the West, I really like the Vancouver Legion in this case to go to the playoffs for the second year in a row. They did it last season as an expansion team. They started 0-4, and then they went through this incredible stretch. I think that they will begin stronger than last year. I don't think that we will see the Vancouver Legion go 0-4 again. I really don't. But I think that we will see a similar type of game from the Vancouver Legion. They will go rely on Tom Pepper, on Ivan Sanchez, and on that ferocious defense to win some ball games on this very difficult division, really. I mean, you have Houston Hyenas. They've gone through the playoffs before. They've gone to the championship game before. You have San Antonio. They are not a rookie team anymore. San Francisco presents a very interesting build that might catch people off guard. So I really think that this division will be a bloodbath, and I'm leaning towards Alaska and Vancouver in this case for the top 2 spots on the West.
Yeah, I certainly don't disagree with you there. And now we're going to move over to the heart of our country, right in the Central Conference. The 6 teams that are going to be playing for spots here are going to be the Chicago, Indianapolis, Oklahoma City, Sioux Falls, St. Louis, and Tulsa. So I must ask, Mighty, who do you think is going to be coming out of our heartland into the SFL playoffs?
Well, the top 2 teams I see coming out of the Central, the Sioux Falls Sparrows, owner Jason, defensive corner A.J. Levy. I can't see them missing the playoffs 2 seasons in a row. Sioux Falls, bread and butter is their defense. This season, they're coming with a vengeance because last season didn't go the way they were wanting it to. So I know their defense is going to be a reason they're going to be in every game. Offensively, we got to see the other night. That running game is going to be a problem, and we know Julian Tyree and the plethora of weapons they have there are going to be a problem for that Central. I also have the Tulsa Desperados expansion. Every season we have an expansion team that comes out of nowhere and just becomes a problem. Sometimes we have two that come out of nowhere and become problems. And Tulsa looks like they might be in, with Dion Hawkins having learned from former championship owner, president who's now president of the SFL. He's the guy that controls and kind of fixes all the rosters for the teams to perform the way they're supposed to. Former Shan Varner, who in his first season as owner got to the championship with Dion as the OC. Damon Simeon, he learned under his wing, who himself as well during his expansion season got to the championship game as well. So there is a trend here, and Dion learned from all those guys, not just offense and defense, but also the right type of build necessary to get there. So I really like Tulsa's chances to make the playoffs this season as the top two in the Central.
Certainly. That is definitely some very strong case for those two teams. Ramos, who do you see is going to come out of this? A pretty tough conference.
Yeah, very tough conference, and I will agree with Mighty once more on one of those teams, and that is the Sioux Falls Sparrows. I spoke about Robert Redford, how he looks impressive. He really does. I really love their team. As Matty said, I don't think that this team will miss the playoffs twice. In back-to-back years. I really like the Sioux Falls Sparrows on this division because, again, as I said on the previous teams, I really like how they match up against the other teams. So Sioux Falls is one of my teams. The other team is the Chicago Wildcats. I love Chicago. I really do. Shan Varner is one of the brightest coaches, in my opinion, in this league. So I really love Chicago with, when I spoke about this on the roster reveal show, how this team looks like an all SFL team. It really looks like an all pro team because they have E.T. King and they have J. Calvin Kim and they are just absolutely stacked. They have Maurice Spurgeon and they have all those guys. So when you look at Chicago, it's like, am I looking at an SFL team or the all pro team of last year? Really. They will put points on the board. That's for sure. I will say Chicago might score 30 plus points on every game because that's how insane that offense looks. And, you cannot sleep on that defense. Maurice Spurgeon is a ball hawk. I really love Chicago and the Sioux Falls Sparrows to come out of this Central Division.
Yeah, those are two teams that really do have a bloodlust after, I guess, kind of disappointing ends to last season. Chicago falling in the championship game to the Aztecs, and Sioux Falls not even making it with, I think, a 6-6 record. Both are going to be gunning for a playoff. And finally, we're going to be heading over to the East Coast. And here are your 6 teams that you can choose from. You have the Atlanta Swarm, Carolina Skyhawks, the new expansion team, the London Knights. We got the Mexico City Aztecs, the Queen City Corsairs, and the Tallahassee Pride. Man, that is one stacked conference right there. Mighty, who do you see is coming out of this on top?
Out of the East, I see the perennial. I see the evil empire of the SFL. Now, don't get this wrong. I'm just mean evil empire. They're who everyone aspires to be. The Queen City Corsairs are gonna make the playoffs again. Just behind, Ash Odom and Caswell. They're gonna be a problem for every team they gotta face. The other team I like out of there is the Atlanta Swarm. Owner Mark Chisholm, he and I are cut from the same cloth. We are all about defense. I know the Swarm are going to come with a defense that wrecks shop. Offensively, they've always been a big play team, and they make just enough big plays to pull out victories. So I really like those two teams to come out of the East this season.
Sir, yeah. Although for not including Mexico City in your top 2, I will smack you for that. Ramos, who do you see is coming out of your new conference?
Well, again, I will agree with Mighty on one of those teams. That is the Queen City Corsairs. You cannot go against the Queen City Corsairs to make the playoffs. You really can't. It's been seasons where either the New York Knights or the Queen City Corsairs look like they're not that great, and then they're just going to run. And they go make the playoffs, and they get another championship. So I just cannot go against Queen City and that just insane backfield that they have right now with Caswell. leading the charge. So I really do like the Queen City Corsairs. And I'm sorry, I'm going to be a homer. I will go with my Mexico City Aztecs because it's my team. And I'm really confident of what we can do on this division and in the SFL overall. So I will go with my Mexico City Aztecs. I think that we have the pieces to go ahead and really repeat. We have the quarterback, we have the running back, we have the receivers, we have the linebackers, we have the defensive backfield, we have the kicker, we have all of that is required for us to go win it all one more time. So I will go with Queen City, and I will go with Mexico City to win in this Eastern Conference.
All right. But of course, those 6 are not the only ones who made it in, as Mighty said. We have 4 wild cards as well. And Mighty and Ramos, who do you think is going to be making it in as wild card? And to throw a little bit of an extra curveball, who do you think is going to make it as dark horse? Someone who you didn't put in right now, but think could certainly make it. Mighty, you're on.
Well, seeing that I left off Mexico City as my top 2 out of the East, I got them coming in at this, at the 7th, filling out my wild card slot. I got the Carolina Skyhawks, AJ Francis, Mark Biddix. They're gonna, get back to the playoffs. They missed it last season after making it for the first time in their franchise history. At 9, I got the Chicago Wildcats. Call it Super Bowl. Super Bowl funny. Championship game losers, blues or whatever. But take them a minute to kind of find their winning ways, but they get hot late and get in. And wrapping it up, I got the Vancouver Legion coming in. Their build initially is a lot of lower tiered players that by the time the second half of the season kind of kicks in, they'll be off and running and really becoming a problem for all the teams they face. And I believe they'll have a surge in the second half as well. My dark horse, the Indianapolis Red Devils, give them the D. They showed up last night, and if their running back is the real deal, the way he showed, they're gonna be a problem as well. And I could see them, catching people. Let me not say unprepared, but being more than what people handle, or expected, and making waves in the Central.
Agreed. And Ramos, who do you say is going to make it as the wild card?
All right, so the 7th seed just barely not being able to beat Chicago and Sioux Falls, but for the division. But they're going to be there. It's going to be Tulsa Desperados. I love that build, and I love how they showed up in the preseason. Deion Hawkins looks like a beast, and the rest of the team does as well. The defense looks fantastic. The quarterback looks great. So I really like Tulsa and the 7th seed. Then at the 8th, I will agree with Mighty there. I will go with the Carolina Skyhawks with that beast backfield. I love Carolina to make the playoffs. I'm pretty sure for the first time actually in franchise history, even if we go back to the Kailua Wyverns and the Honolulu Legends. I mean, that's throwback. That's old school. I don't think they've made the playoffs, probably one on their history. So I will go with Carolina as the 8th seed. Then on the 9th seed, I will go with Dallas here. I will go with the Roughnecks because even though when I look at the build, it's like, I'm more like a traditional build and like, probably, but I can never count Steven off. And they have Trollo Shaw. I mean, that's it. They have Trollo Shaw. And finally, my last seed will be the Houston Hyenas to make the playoffs. I cannot count out Houston. I love the Houston's build. Even though they lost against Tulsa, that really doesn't bother me. I really like Houston. And as my sleeper, I will have the St. Louis Gladiators. I really like St. Louis, how they are kind of like learning from their mistakes, if I can say mistake, or how they've not been that successful in previous seasons, and they have addressed those issues. So with great coaching that I'm sure they will bring to the table, I have St. Louis to probably surprise some people this year.
Alrighty. And now, of course, after all these preseason hullabaloo is going to be done, we're going to be heading right into week 1. On January 7th, we have the San Antonio Vaqueros taking on the Dallas Roughnecks at 3 p.m. Central. The London Knights taking on the Atlanta Swarm at that same time. Tulsa and OKC are going to be battling at that time. And finally, at that time, we're going to be having Sioux Falls battle the Houston Hyenas, or as Mighty would say, Hyenas. At 5 p.m. Central, we have the Vancouver Legion taking on the Atlanta Swarm, battle for the Northwest. Also at that time, we have the St. Louis Gladiators taking on the Chicago Wildcats. And as the winner of the fan vote getting flexed into the 7 p.m. slot, we have Tallahassee taking on the Carolina Skyhawks, probably the largest rivalry in the SFL. Then finally, for Monday night SFL football, we have the Indianapolis Red Devils traveling over to San Francisco to take on the Sharks. But before all that, on Thursday, January 4th at 7 p.m. Central, 8 Eastern, live on the Twitch front page, we have the Queen City Corsairs taking on the Mexico City Aztecs. Mighty, what do you have to say about this game, really?
Man, I had to go way back to season 1. I was breaking down to see, opening day records of both teams, how many times both teams have faced each other, how many times, so saying all that. Queen City, 5-4 all-time opening weekend. Mexico City, 3-2 all-time opening weekend. I had to go even further back. I'm like, wait. Let's see who is good on the road, who's good away. Mexico City, 2-0 at home on opening weekend. That means undefeated, right? Queen City, they're 1-2 away on opening weekend. I had to dive in even deeper. I'm like, hold up. Ramos been here for a minute. Ramos, what's your record against Queen City? He's like, man, I'm undefeated, dog. Like, what? Opening weekend, season 4, they traveled to Queen City to give Queen City a home loss. That was when he was a member of the Baltimore Crabs. He was the defensive coordinator. And later on that season, when Queen City had to visit Baltimore, they put a thumping to Queen City. So Ramos is undefeated against Queen City. It's going to be a battle of Ash versus Jack and Mac. Y'all like, who is Jack and Mac? We got Jack and Mac. That's the linebacking core for the Mexico City Aztecs. Can Ash dominate the game, which will help Queen City and the rest of their offense move the ball? Or will Jack and Mac stop Ash to help Mexico City's offense, who's kind of in training wheel stages, because Ray Bentley is not the Ray Bentley that we know and love quite yet. I like Mexico City's chances because I know Ramos knows defense, and those big play receivers out there only need but to make a couple of big plays here and there to give them the edge, and I like them by field goal coming up this weekend. I mean, this Thursday on Twitch.
Okay, and real quick before we go, Ramos, what do you have to say about this game?
Well, I have to be a homer. I'm sorry. I have to go with my Aztecs. If I have to pick a team, I will go with the Aztecs. I don't want to, and I don't like picking my own team, but I will go with my Aztecs. I really think that our linebackers, Mac and Jack, as you said, Mighty, can really stop. If not stop, really contain the running back. I really like our secondary against the receivers, and I think that Ray Bentley will have a better outing in this game that he had in the preseason game. I like Matt Wilson and our receivers as well against their defensive backfield. So I will go with my Aztecs, just again, as you said, Mighty, for maybe 3 or 4 points.
Alrighty, and with that, we have concluded our first ever episode of the newly revamped SFL podcast presented by APM Music. I'm Jack Brown, along with my co-host Ramos and Mighty, and I'd say thank you, SFL Nation, for tuning in. Now go over to YouTube to watch the Atlanta Swarm take on the San Francisco Sharks, followed up directly by the St. Louis Gladiators taking on the London Knights to conclude the preseason. Thank you for tuning in and have a great evening.